Violet Harlow stared at the gleaming skyscraper that housed Thorne Industries, her heart pounding in her chest. 8 years. 8 long years since she'd last set foot in this part of Manhattan. She adjusted the lapel of her tailored navy suit and checked her reflection in her compact mirror. At 30, she barely recognized herself. Gone was the naive art student with perpetually paint-stained fingers. In her place stood a woman with calculating eyes and a smile that never quite reached them. "Mom, are we going to be late?" The voice beside her pulled her back to reality. Archer, her 7-year-old son, looked up at her with familiar piercing blue eyes, his father's eyes. "No, sweetheart. We're right on time." Violet ran her fingers through Archer's sandy blonde hair. "Remember what I told you? This is an important meeting for Mommy's new job." "At Thorne Industries," Archer recited. "Where you used to work before I was born." "That's right," Violet said, swallowing hard. What she hadn't told him was that Thorne Industries belonged to his father, a father who had no idea he existed. "Ready?" Archer nodded, and Violet took his small hand in hers as they walked through the revolving doors. The lobby was exactly as she remembered it, all glass and steel and cold elegance. Memories washed over her like a tidal wave. She'd first walked through these doors as a 22-year-old art consultant, hired to curate the company's extensive art collection. And it was here that she'd first met Dexter Thorne, the 31-year-old CEO who had inherited the company from his father. "May I help you?" The receptionist's voice jolted Violet from her thoughts. "Yes. Violet Harlow for Mr. Richmond. I have an appointment at 10. The receptionist's fingers danced across her keyboard. "Ah yes, Miss Harlow. Mr. Richmond is expecting you. 42nd floor." Violet nodded. "Thank you." As they rode the elevator up, Archer pressed his face against the glass, watching the city shrink beneath them. Violet closed her eyes, letting herself slip into the memory of the first time she'd met Dexter. It had been at an art auction. She'd been there to bid on a piece for a client when she'd spotted him across the room, tall, impeccably dressed, with a presence that seemed to command attention without effort. When he'd outbid her client for a Rothko piece, she'd approached him afterward, determined to negotiate. "$60 million for a Rothko?" she'd said, stepping into his path. "You overpaid by at least $15 million." He'd looked at her with those startling blue eyes, first with surprise, then amusement. "And you are?" "Violet Harlow. Art consultant for Matthews Gallery. Dexter Thorne." He'd extended his hand, and when she'd taken it, she'd felt an unmistakable current between them. "And I'd pay double for the right piece." 3 weeks later, he'd hired her to curate for Thorne Industries. 6 months after that, they were involved. A year later, they were married in a lavish ceremony covered by every major society publication. The elevator dinged, pulling Violet back to the present. They stepped out onto the executive floor, and Violet steeled herself. She hadn't seen Dexter in 8 years, not since that rainy night when everything had fallen apart. "Miss Harlow?" A man in his mid-40s approached them, hand extended. "I'm Elliot Richmond, head of acquisitions. Thank you for coming in." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Richmond," Violet said, shaking his hand. "This is my son, Archer." "Nice to meet you, young man," Elliot said, shaking Archer's hand with exaggerated formality that made the boy smile. "I've arranged for Archer to wait in our lounge area. Lisa from HR will keep him company. We have books, a tablet with games, and plenty of snacks." Violet hesitated. "That's very thoughtful, but—" "Mom, it's okay," Archer said. "I brought my book about space." Violet knelt down to Archer's level. "I won't be long. Be good for Lisa, okay?" Archer nodded, and Violet watched as a friendly-looking woman led him to a comfortable seating area visible through a glass partition. "Your son seems very well adjusted," Elliot commented as they walked toward the conference room. "He is," Violet replied. "It's been just the two of us for a long time. Single parenting isn't easy." Elliot's voice was sympathetic. "My sister's doing it with twins. I don't know how she manages." "You do what you have to for your children," Violet said simply. They reached the conference room, and Elliot opened the door for her. Violet took a deep breath and stepped inside. 5 executives sat around the table, but her eyes immediately went to the man at the head, Dexter Thorne. He looked older, with threads of silver at his temples, but otherwise unchanged. Still devastatingly handsome, still emanating that same quiet power. For a moment their eyes met, and she saw no recognition there. Then slowly his expression changed from polite interest to shock. "This is Violet Harlow," Elliot was saying. "The marketing consultant I was telling you about." She's done remarkable work for Jensen Corp and... What is this? Dexter's voice cut through the room like a blade. What kind of game are you playing? Elliot blinked in confusion. I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand. It's all right, Elliot, Violet said calmly, though her heart was racing. Mr. Thorne and I have met before. Met before? Dexter stood up, his hands flat on the table. Violet was my wife. The room fell silent. Elliot looked between them, mouth agape. I had no idea. Your last name. I changed it back to my maiden name after the divorce, Violet explained, never taking her eyes off Dexter. Everyone out, Dexter said quietly. When no one moved, he raised his voice. Now. The executives scrambled to their feet, gathering their tablets and papers before filing out of the room. Elliot was the last to leave, giving Violet an apologetic look before closing the door behind him. For a long moment, Dexter and Violet just stared at each other. 8 years, he finally said, his voice deceptively soft. 8 years of silence, and now you walk into my company under false pretenses? I didn't lie about anything, Violet replied. Elliot contacted me based on my portfolio. I didn't know he worked for you until after our initial meeting. And you didn't think to mention it then? Would you have hired me if you knew? Dexter's laugh was harsh. Of course not. Then you have your answer. Violet set her portfolio on the table. Besides, my work speaks for itself. The Jensen campaign increased their market share by 22%. I don't care if you raise the dead, Dexter snapped. You disappeared for 8 years, Violet. No calls, no letters. You just vanished. After you told me to get out of your life, Violet reminded him, her own anger finally seeping into her voice. After you accused me of things I would never do. After you threw me away like I was nothing. You walked out, he countered. You didn't even try to fight for our marriage. Fight. Violet laughed bitterly. You had security escort me out of our home in the middle of the night. You froze our accounts. You had your lawyers serve me divorce papers at my parents' funeral. What exactly was I supposed to fight with, Dexter? A flicker of something, perhaps regret, crossed his face, but it was quickly replaced by the cold mask she remembered from their final days together. Why are you here, Violet? Really? Violet straightened her shoulders. For the job. Contrary to what you might think, not everything is about you, Dexter. Before he could respond, there was a knock at the door, and it opened to reveal Lisa from HR looking apologetic. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Mr. Thorne, but... It's all right, Lisa, Violet said, turning toward the door. Is everything okay with Archer? He's fine, Lisa assured her. He just wanted to know how much longer you'd be. I'll be right out, Violet promised. As Lisa closed the door, Violet turned back to find Dexter staring at her with an odd expression. Archer? He repeated. You have a son? Violet met his gaze unflinchingly. Yes. How old is he? 7. Dexter's jaw clenched. 7. And when did you remarry? I didn't. His eyes narrowed as he calculated silently. 7 years old. That would mean. His face paled. Is he mine? The door opened again before Violet could answer, and this time it was Archer himself who poked his head in. Mom, can I have another juice box? Lisa said I have to ask you. Violet forced a smile. Of course, sweetheart. One more is fine. But Archer wasn't looking at her anymore. His eyes were fixed on Dexter, his small brow furrowed in concentration. Are you Mr. Thorne? Dexter seemed frozen, staring at the boy with those identical blue eyes. Yes, I am. Archer stepped fully into the room, extending his hand just as he'd been taught. I'm Archer Harlow. Nice to meet you. Dexter reached out automatically, shaking the small hand. Nice to meet you too, Archer. Archer tilted his head. You look like the man in Mom's old pictures. Violet felt her heart stop. Archer, why don't you go back with Lisa? I'll be done soon. Okay. Archer turned to leave but paused at the door. Mr. Thorne, do you like space? Dexter seemed to struggle for words. Yes. I do. Me too, Archer said with a bright smile. I'm going to be an astronaut when I grow up. And with that he was gone, leaving a deafening silence in his wake. Dexter turned to Violet, his expression a storm of emotions. He's mine. It wasn't a question, but Violet answered anyway. Yes. And you kept him from me? For 7 years. 8, Violet corrected quietly. I was already pregnant when I left. Dexter's hand came down hard on the table. You had no right. I had every right, Violet shot back. You made it abundantly clear you wanted nothing to do with me. He's my son. A son you didn't know existed until 5 minutes ago, Violet pointed out. A son who has been perfectly happy and well-adjusted without you in his life. Dexter looked as though she'd slapped him. Does he know about me? Violet shook her head. He knows his father wasn't in the picture. That's all. That's all? Dexter's voice rose. That's all? I'm not some deadbeat who abandoned his kid, Violet. I'm his father and you kept him from me. Would you have wanted him? Violet challenged. If I had told you I was pregnant that night, would it have changed anything? Dexter opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. The silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, Violet said quietly. She picked up her portfolio. I should go. Wait, Dexter said, his voice suddenly hoarse. Where are you staying? The plaza, Violet replied. We fly back to Chicago tomorrow. Chicago? Dexter took a step toward her. You've been in Chicago all this time? Does it matter? Violet asked wearily. Of course it matters. Dexter ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Violet's heart ache despite herself. You can't just drop this bomb and leave, Violet. We need to talk. We're talking now. About Archer, Dexter clarified. About arrangements. Violet felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of arrangements? Visitation for starters, Dexter said. He's my son. I have rights. Rights you didn't even know you wanted until 10 minutes ago, Violet pointed out. That doesn't change the fact that he's mine, Dexter insisted. I want to get to know him. And what happens when you get bored? Violet asked. When he doesn't fit neatly into your perfectly controlled life. Will you discard him too? Pain flashed across Dexter's face. Is that what you think of me? That I'd abandon my own child? You abandoned me, Violet reminded him. Your wife. That was different, Dexter said quietly. You betrayed me. I never betrayed you, Violet said, her voice breaking slightly. Never. But you were so determined to believe the worst of me that you wouldn't even listen. For a moment, Dexter looked uncertain. Then he shook his head as if to clear it. Have dinner with me tonight. We need to discuss this properly. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, Violet. There was something in his voice she'd never heard before, a hint of vulnerability. Just dinner. For Archer's sake. Violet hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Fine. Dinner. But Archer won't be there. I'm not introducing you as his father until I'm sure of your intentions. Dexter nodded stiffly. Fair enough. 8 o'clock at Daniel. I'll send a car. I can get myself there, Violet said, heading for the door. Violet, Dexter called after her. She paused but didn't turn around. For what it's worth, he seems like a remarkable boy. Violet allowed herself a small smile. He is. She opened the door. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. As she walked away, Violet could feel Dexter's eyes on her back. Phase 1 of her plan was complete. Tonight would be Phase 2. After 8 years of planning, of building herself up from nothing, of nursing the wound of betrayal, she was finally in position to take everything from the man who had taken everything from her. What Dexter didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that dinner tonight wasn't just about Archer. It was about the documents in Violet's hotel safe. Documents that could bring Thorne Industries crashing down around his ears. Documents worth killing for. Or at least worth destroying a life for. Violet stood in front of the mirror in her hotel suite, smoothing the fabric of her black dress. Simple, elegant, with just enough edge to it, a dress designed for battle. You look pretty, Mom, Archer said from where he sat cross-legged on the bed, a space encyclopedia open in front of him. Violet smiled at her son's reflection. Thank you, sweetheart. Are you having dinner with Mr. Thorne? Archer asked, his eyes returning to the book. The man from today? Violet's hand stilled. Yes. How did you know? Archer shrugged. I heard you talking on the phone with Aunt Meredith. You said his name. Violet made a mental note to be more careful with her conversations. Archer had always been observant, but lately he seemed to catch everything. Mr. Thorne and I have some business to discuss. Is he the man in your old pictures? The ones in the box under your bed? Violet turned to face her son. You've been looking through my things? Archer had the grace to look sheepish. I was looking for my birthday present last month. I found the box by accident. He hesitated. Is he my dad? The question hung in the air between them. Violet had always known this moment would come, but she'd imagined it differently, planned it differently. Why do you ask that? she deflected, sitting on the edge of the bed. He has eyes like mine, Archer said simply. And when he looked at me today he seemed really surprised, like he'd seen a ghost. The boy's intelligence had always been both a blessing and a challenge. Violet sighed. It's complicated, Archer. You always say that when you don't want to answer something. Despite herself, Violet laughed. You're too smart for your own good, you know that? Archer nodded seriously. That's what Principal Walters says too. Violet reached out to smooth his hair. Mr. Thorne and I knew each other a long time ago. Before you were born. Were you married to him? Archer persisted. Violet hesitated, then nodded. Yes, we were married. So he is my dad. It wasn't a question this time, and Violet felt a tightness in her chest. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Not yet. Biologically, yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because. Violet struggled for the right words. Because sometimes adults make mistakes. Sometimes they hurt each other so badly that they can't be around each other anymore. Did he hurt you? Archer's voice was small but fierce. Violet's mind flashed to that rainy night 8 years ago, the accusations, the cold fury in Dexter's eyes, the security guards escorting her out of their home with nothing but the clothes on her back and her purse. She remembered sleeping in her car that night, too shocked and heartbroken to even think of where to go. Yes, she said softly. He hurt me very much. Then I don't like him, Archer declared, closing his book with a thump. It's not that simple, Archer. Violet chose her words carefully. Mr. Thorne didn't know about you until today. Archer frowned. Why not? Because when he hurt me I left. And I didn't tell him I was going to have a baby. Why? Such a simple question with such a complicated answer. How could she explain to a 7-year-old the tangle of pride, hurt, and fear that had driven her decision? How could she tell him about the evidence she'd found afterward, the corruption at the heart of Thorne Industries that Dexter had either orchestrated or deliberately overlooked? I was afraid, Violet said, which was partially true. Afraid he wouldn't be a good father to you. Is that why we came here? So he could meet me? Violet hesitated. Partly, she admitted. But also for my work. And, there are some things I need to settle with Mr. Thorne from our past. A knock at the door interrupted them. That'll be Lisa, Violet said, grateful for the diversion. She'd arranged for Lisa from HR to babysit Archer tonight. A strategic choice. Lisa had access to Thorne Industries' internal systems, and while she watched over Archer, a program on Violet's laptop would be quietly copying files from the USB drive Lisa had unwittingly brought with her. Violet opened the door to find Lisa standing there, smiling brightly. Hi, Miss Harlow. And hello, Archer. I brought some movies and games. She held up a bag. I hope that's okay. That's perfect, Violet said. Thank you again for doing this on such short notice. No problem at all, Lisa said, stepping into the suite. Mr. Richmond asked me personally. Actually, I think he feels bad about this morning's awkwardness. It wasn't your fault, Violet assured her. She turned to Archer. Be good for Lisa, okay? I won't be too late. Can I wait up for you? Archer asked. Not tonight, buddy. It's already past your usual bedtime. But we'll talk more tomorrow, I promise. She kissed the top of his head, whispering an I love you before grabbing her purse and heading out. As she closed the door, she caught a glimpse of Lisa setting up her laptop on the desk, right next to Violet's own computer, just as planned. The restaurant was only a short walk from the plaza, and Violet deliberately arrived 10 minutes late. A small power play. Let Dexter be the one to wait for once. The maitre d' led her to a private dining room in the back of the restaurant, where Dexter stood as she entered. He'd changed into a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, and for a moment, Violet was transported back to their first date. You look beautiful, he said, and the sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Thank you, she replied, taking the seat a waiter pulled out for her. Wine. Dexter gestured to a bottle of Chateau Margaux. You remembered? Violet said, surprised. It had been her favorite during their marriage. I remember everything about you, Violet, Dexter said quietly as the waiter poured 2 glasses. Despite what you might think. The waiter discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone in the elegantly appointed room. Where's Archer tonight? Dexter asked, taking a sip of his wine. At the hotel with a sitter, Violet replied. Lisa from your HR department, actually. Dexter's eyebrows rose. You trust my employees with our son, but not me? I've known Lisa for all of 12 hours, which is exactly 12 hours longer than you've known Archer. Dexter set down his glass with deliberate control. That's not by my choice, is it? No, Violet agreed. It was mine. A choice I made after you threw me out like garbage based on lies. They weren't lies, Violet, Dexter said, his voice hardening. I saw the emails. I saw the transfers from our accounts to your private one. $500,000 siphoned off over 6 months. And then the messages to Jackson about meeting in Buenos Aires after you'd taken care of things. Violet laughed bitterly. And you never once thought to ask me about it? To give me a chance to explain? What was there to explain? My wife was stealing from me and planning to run off with my best friend. Your friend? Violet emphasized. I barely knew Preston Jackson. He was your boarding school buddy, your fishing trip companion. I spoke to him maybe 10 times in our entire marriage. The emails were fake, Violet cut him off. Something I could have proved if you'd given me even 5 minutes to defend myself. Dexter stared at her. Why would someone fake emails between you and Preston? To get rid of me, Violet said simply. To drive a wedge between us. And it worked beautifully, didn't it? You were so quick to believe the worst of me. A shadow of doubt crossed Dexter's face. If what you're saying is true, why not fight it? Why disappear for 8 years? Violet took a sip of her wine, choosing her words carefully. When the person you love most in the world discards you without a second thought, it changes you. I was heartbroken, pregnant, and suddenly penniless. Fighting you and your army of lawyers wasn't exactly a priority. You were pregnant, Dexter repeated, his voice hollow. With my child. And you never told me. Would it have mattered? Violet challenged. Or would you have accused me of trying to trap you? Of the baby not being yours? Dexter flinched. I would never. Wouldn't you? Violet pressed. You believed I was capable of theft and infidelity without a shred of real evidence. Why not add baby trapping to the list? Before Dexter could respond, the waiter returned with their appetizers, forcing a momentary ceasefire. When they were alone again, Dexter spoke, his voice subdued. Archer seems remarkable. Smart. Well-adjusted. He is, Violet agreed, unable to keep the pride from her voice. Top of his class. Reads at a 5th grade level. Obsessed with space and science. Like me, Dexter said softly. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. I know, Violet replied. You told me once, after we visited Kennedy Space Center on our honeymoon. A ghost of a smile touched Dexter's lips. You remember that? I remember everything too, Dexter. Silence fell between them, heavy with shared memories and unspoken regrets. He asked about you tonight, Violet finally said. Archer. He found some old photos. He asked if you were his father. Dexter's fork clattered against his plate. What did you tell him? The truth. That biologically, yes, you are. Biologically, Dexter repeated, his jaw tightening. As if that's all it is. That is all it is at the moment, Violet pointed out. You haven't been his father in any way that matters. Because you didn't give me the chance, Dexter countered, anger seeping back into his voice. And now? Violet asked. Now that you know about him, what do you want, Dexter? Truly? Dexter sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I want to know my son. I want him to know me. I've missed 7 years of his life already, I don't want to miss any more. And how do you propose we do that? We live in Chicago. Your life is here. Move back, Dexter said simply. I'll set you up in an apartment. I'll pay for Archer's schooling. We can work out a custody arrangement. Violet laughed incredulously. Just like that? You think I'll uproot our entire life because you've suddenly decided you want to play daddy? He's my son, Dexter insisted, his voice rising slightly. He's my son, Violet countered. I'm the one who raised him. I'm the one who held him when he was sick, who taught him to read, who kissed his scraped knees and chased away the monsters under his bed. You're just DNA, Dexter. The flash of pain in his eyes gave Violet a cruel satisfaction. Good. Let him hurt. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt. I have rights, Dexter said quietly. Legal rights. Are you threatening me? Violet asked, her voice dangerously soft. I'm stating a fact, Dexter replied. If you force my hand, I'll go to court. With my resources, who do you think will win? A chill ran down Violet's spine. This was the Dexter she remembered from those final days, cold, calculating, wielding his power like a weapon. You'd put Archer through that? A custody battle? I don't want to, Dexter said. But I will if I have to. Violet set down her napkin, a plan forming in her mind. What if I agreed to stay in New York for a while? A trial period. You could get to know Archer and we could see how things go. Dexter looked surprised by her concession. "You'd do that?" "For Archer's sake," Violet said, watching him carefully. "If, and only if, you agree to my conditions." "Which are?" "First we take it slow. You don't tell him you're his father right away. You build a relationship with him first." Dexter nodded reluctantly. "That's fair. What else?" "I need a job," Violet said. "A real one, not charity. I've worked too hard to build my career to give it up now." "I can't hire you at Thorn Industries," Dexter said flatly. "It would be too complicated." "Not at Thorn Industries," Violet agreed. "But you have connections. All I'm asking is for an introduction or two." Dexter studied her for a long moment. "And the third condition?" Violet held his gaze. "Full financial transparency about Thorn Industries. If I'm considering tying Archer's future to your company, I need to know it's stable." "That's absurd," Dexter scoffed. "My company is one of the most profitable in the country." "Then you have nothing to hide," Violet said with a shrug. "Those are my terms." Dexter narrowed his eyes. "Why does that feel like the real reason you're here? What game are you playing, Violet?" "No game," Violet lied smoothly. "Just protecting my son's interests. So, do we have a deal?" Dexter hesitated, clearly suspicious of her sudden cooperation. "I want joint legal custody. Eventually," he added when he saw Violet's expression harden. "Once Archer and I have established a relationship." Violet pretended to consider this. "We can discuss it. After the trial period." "How long?" 3 months, Violet suggested. "That should be enough time for us to see if this arrangement can work." Dexter nodded slowly. "All right. 3 months." He extended his hand across the table. "We have a deal." Violet took his hand, fighting to keep her expression neutral despite the thrill of triumph coursing through her. His fingers felt familiar against hers, and for a moment she was reminded of the man she'd fallen in love with, before ambition and paranoia had twisted him into someone she no longer recognized. "To new beginnings," Dexter said, raising his wine glass. "To new beginnings," Violet echoed, clinking her glass against his while thinking, "and final endings." The rest of dinner passed in a strange dance of formality and occasional glimpses of their former intimacy. Dexter told her about his mother's death 2 years prior, news that genuinely saddened Violet, as Eleanor Thorne had always been kind to her. Violet shared carefully selected stories about Archer's early years, watching as a mixture of joy and grief played across Dexter's features with each milestone he'd missed. By the time dessert arrived, Violet could see that Dexter was beginning to lower his guard. When he smiled at a story about 5-year-old Archer attempting to build a rocket ship out of cardboard boxes, it was a real smile, the kind that had once made her heart race. "He sounds so much like me at that age," Dexter said, shaking his head in wonder. "My mother used to tell stories about finding me asleep surrounded by space books and half-built models." "He gets your focus too," Violet said. "Once he starts something he won't stop until it's finished, even if it takes all day." "Stubbornness runs in the Thorne blood," Dexter admitted. Then after a pause, "I'd like him to have my name." And just like that, the moment of warmth evaporated. "That's not on the table right now," Violet said firmly. "He's a Thorne, Violet. The only Thorne. The last of my line." "He's a Harlow," Violet corrected. "That's who he's been his entire life." "Because you chose to hide him from me," Dexter reminded her, his voice edged with renewed anger. "We're not doing this again," Violet said, pushing her dessert plate away. "The past is the past. We're focusing on the future now, remember?" Dexter exhaled slowly, visibly reining in his temper. "You're right. I'm sorry." He gestured for the check. "Where are you staying again? The plaza, right? I'll have a car take you back." "That's not necessary," Violet said, standing. "It's a nice night. I'll walk." "Always so independent," Dexter murmured, and Violet couldn't tell if it was admiration or criticism in his voice. Outside the restaurant, an awkward moment stretched between them. "Thank you for dinner," Violet said formally. "When can I see Archer?" Dexter asked, hands in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I'll bring him to Central Park tomorrow," Violet decided. "By the boat pond. Noon." Dexter nodded. "I'll be there." He hesitated, then added, "For what it's worth, Violet, I've missed you." The unexpected admission threw her off balance. 8 years of plotting her revenge, of hardening her heart against him, and 4 simple words threatened to crack her resolve. "Good night, Dexter," she said, turning away before he could see the confusion in her eyes. As she walked back to the hotel, Violet's mind raced. part of her was exultant. Everything was going according to plan. Dexter was already giving her what she needed: time in New York, access to his world, and soon access to Thorne Industries itself. The financial documents her contact had hinted at would be within reach. But another part of her, a part she'd thought long dead, was troubled by the genuine grief in Dexter's eyes when he spoke of the years he'd missed with his son. By the way he'd remembered her favorite wine. By his unguarded admission of missing her. Could she have been wrong? Could there be more to the story of their separation than she knew? Violet shook her head, banishing the doubts. She couldn't afford softness now, not when she was so close to her goal. Dexter Thorne had destroyed her once. She wouldn't give him the chance to do it again. In her hotel room, she found Lisa reading a magazine while Archer slept peacefully in his bed. How was he? Violet whispered. An absolute dream, Lisa replied, gathering her things. So polite, so smart. You've done an amazing job with him, Miss Harlow. Thank you, Violet said, walking her to the door. And thank you for watching him tonight. Anytime, Lisa said cheerfully. My laptop's still running that software update you mentioned, but it should be done by morning. Perfect, Violet said, fighting to keep her expression neutral. Good night, Lisa. As soon as the door closed behind her, Violet rushed to check her laptop. The program had worked. Lisa's USB drive had been completely copied. Tomorrow, while Dexter played Happy Family with Archer at the park, Violet would be analyzing exactly what Preston Jackson had been hiding all these years. Preston Jackson, Dexter's oldest friend and the man who'd allegedly been having an affair with Violet. The man who'd mysteriously disappeared 3 days after Dexter had thrown Violet out. The man whose body had been found 2 weeks later in a hotel room in Buenos Aires, an apparent suicide. But Violet knew better. Preston hadn't killed himself. He'd known too much, just as she did now. And that knowledge was going to bring Dexter Thorne to his knees. Violet closed her laptop and walked to the window, looking out at the glittering New York skyline. For 8 years, revenge had been her oxygen, her reason for getting out of bed each morning. Now that it was within reach, why did it suddenly taste so bitter? She glanced at Archer, sleeping soundly, unaware of the storm gathering around him. Was she doing the right thing? Would her revenge bring her the peace she so desperately sought, or would it only create more casualties, Archer chief among them? For the first time in 8 years, Violet felt a flicker of doubt. Central Park sparkled in the midday sun as Archer ran ahead, fascinated by the miniature sailboats gliding across the boat pond. Violet watched him from a bench, her heart heavy with the knowledge of what she'd discovered last night in Lisa's files. He really does love space, doesn't he? Violet didn't need to turn to recognize Dexter's voice. Since he could talk, she replied as he sat beside her. Dexter was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, so different from his usual corporate armor. He looked younger, more like the man she'd fallen in love with. Did you tell him I'd be here? He asked, watching Archer intently. Yes. He knows we're meeting a friend of mine. Violet hesitated. Dexter, before we go over there, I need to talk to you about something. What is it? Violet took a deep breath. I found something in the files I accessed through Lisa's USB drive. Dexter stiffened. You what? Preston didn't kill himself, did he? Violet asked quietly. Dexter's face drained of color. What are you talking about? I have the emails, Dexter. The real ones, not the fake someone sent you. Preston discovered something in Thorne Industries' South American division. Illegal mining operations, environmental violations, bribes to government officials. Violet watched his expression carefully. He was going to blow the whistle, wasn't he? That's why he contacted me. Dexter stood abruptly. This is absurd. If you're trying to extort me. I'm not, Violet interrupted. I'm trying to understand what really happened. Because the same day you threw me out, Preston sent me this. She held up her phone, showing an email she'd kept hidden for 8 years. He was warning me, Dexter. He knew someone was setting me up to take the fall. Dexter took the phone, his hands trembling slightly as he read. Be someone's framing you. Don't trust anyone, not even D. Meeting with whistleblower tomorrow. We'll call when safe. Destroy this. B. He never called, Violet said softly. 3 days later he was found in Buenos Aires. And I was alone, pregnant, with nothing. Dexter sank back onto the bench, his face ashen. I never what? No? Or never ordered it. Violet's voice was steel. I would never have hurt Preston, Dexter said hoarsely. He was like a brother to me. Then who did? Dexter ran a hand through his hair. It had to be Malcolm. My CO back then. Your mother's cousin, Violet recalled. The one who practically raised you after your father died. Yes. He was running our South American operations. If Preston found something. Dexter looked up at her, devastation in his eyes. Violet, you have to believe me. I didn't know. But you believed I betrayed you, Violet said, the hurt still raw. You believed I was stealing from you, cheating with your best friend. You threw me away without a second thought. I was shown evidence, Dexter said weakly. You were shown what Malcolm wanted you to see, Violet corrected. What was easier to believe than the truth, that the man who raised you, who you trusted with your company, was corrupt? Archer's laughter floated across the pond, drawing both their gazes. He'd managed to get one of the boats moving with a particularly good push. What are you going to do with this information? Dexter asked quietly. Violet had asked herself that same question all night. Her original plan had been clear: expose Thorne Industries' corruption, destroy Dexter's reputation, take everything from him as he'd taken everything from her. She'd spent 8 years building toward that moment. But now, looking at Archer's joy, at Dexter's genuine shock and grief, she found herself wavering. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me still wants to burn your world to the ground. I wouldn't blame you, Dexter said softly. I failed you, Violet. Failed us. His admission caught her off guard. The Dexter she'd known would never have accepted blame so readily. Mom? Look. Archer called, waving excitedly. Can I show Mr. Thorne my boat? Violet hesitated, then nodded. Go ahead. Dexter stood as Archer approached, a tentative smile on his face. Hello, Archer. That's quite a boat you've got there. It's the fastest one, Archer declared proudly. I figured out you have to angle it just right with the wind. Smart thinking, Dexter said, crouching to Archer's level. You know, when I was your age, I used to race boats here too. Really? Archer's eyes widened with interest. Did you win? Sometimes, Dexter admitted. But there was this one kid, Tommy Brennan, who always seemed to beat me. What did you do? I studied the way he launched his boat, figured out his technique, and then I practiced until I got even better, Dexter explained. Archer nodded seriously. That's what Mom always says. Practice and observation make you better at anything. Your mom is very wise, Dexter said, glancing up at Violet with something like reverence in his eyes. Want to try? Archer asked, offering Dexter his boat. The simple gesture, this small extension of trust, seemed to overwhelm Dexter. He swallowed hard before replying, I'd be honored. Violet watched as they walked to the edge of the pond together, Dexter listening intently as Archer explained his launching technique. Something tightened in her chest, not pain exactly, but a kind of bittersweet ache for what might have been. For an hour she observed them from the bench as they raced boats, laughed and talked about space, science and baseball. Archer, usually reserved with strangers, seemed drawn to Dexter in a way that both warmed and frightened Violet. It was as if some part of him recognized his father, despite having never known him. When they finally returned to the bench, Archer's cheeks were flushed with excitement. Mom, Mr. Thorne knows Captain Nova too. He has all the comics, even the rare ones. Is that so? Violet replied, raising an eyebrow at Dexter. Some things you never outgrow, Dexter said with a self-deprecating smile. Archer, would it be okay if I talked to your mom alone for a minute? Archer looked between them, suddenly perceptive. Is it about grown-up stuff? Yes, Violet confirmed. Why don't you go see if you can beat your record for the fastest crossing? Once Archer was out of earshot, Dexter turned to Violet, his expression grave. I need to make this right, Violet. How? Violet asked. You can't undo the past 8 years. No, Dexter admitted. But I can take responsibility for what happened. For what Malcolm did in my name with my company. You'd risk Thorne Industries? Violet was skeptical. Your entire legacy? What legacy? Dexter asked bitterly. A company built on corruption? A fortune stained with blood? What kind of example would that set for Archer? Violet studied him, searching for deceit but finding only resolve. What exactly are you suggesting? Help me, Dexter said simply. Help me clean up my company. We'll expose Malcolm, make amends to anyone harmed by our operations, restructure everything if we have to. He paused. I won't lose my son again, Violet. And I don't want to be the man who let this happen anymore. Why should I trust you? Violet challenged. After everything? Because you know me, Dexter replied. The real me, not the man I became when I let paranoia and ambition cloud my judgment. He tentatively reached for her hand. And because I think a part of you still cares, or you wouldn't be here having this conversation. You'd have gone straight to the press with what you found. Violet didn't pull her hand away. I came here for justice, Dexter. Then help me deliver it, he urged. The right way. Not a revenge that hurts everyone, including Archer, but justice that might actually heal some of the wounds. Before Violet could respond, her phone rang. Looking at the screen, she frowned. It's Lisa from your HR department. That's odd. She answered, and her blood ran cold at Lisa's frantic words. Miss Harlow, I'm so sorry. I don't know how it happened, but someone accessed my computer remotely last night. All my files were open, including the personnel files for the executive team. And now someone's deleted everything. IT is saying it looks like a targeted attack. Violet's eyes flew to Dexter. Was anyone asking about those files specifically? That's the thing, Lisa said, her voice shaking. Mr. Richmond was asking about Malcolm Thorne's old files just yesterday. Said he needed to review something from 5 years ago. Elliot Richmond? Dexter asked, having overheard. My head of acquisitions? Violet's mind raced. Lisa, where is Elliot now? That's why I called, Lisa said. He just cleared out his office. Security said he left in a hurry about 20 minutes ago. Dexter was already on his feet. Malcolm's protege, he said grimly. They've always been close. A terrible realization dawned on Violet. If he knows we're onto them? They both turned to look for Archer, but the spot by the pond where he'd been playing was empty. Archer. Violet called, panic rising in her throat. Archer. Dexter was already running, scanning the area. Security, he barked into his phone. I need a team at the Central Park boat pond now. My son is missing. Violet raced around the pond, calling Archer's name, her heart hammering against her ribs. This couldn't be happening. Not when they were so close to the truth. There. Dexter pointed to a figure in a dark coat, hurrying toward the park exit with a small struggling form beside him. Archer. Violet screamed. The man looked back, Elliot Richmond, and quickened his pace, dragging Archer with him. Dexter sprinted after them, faster than Violet had ever seen him move. She followed, her lungs burning, terror giving her speed she didn't know she possessed. Elliot reached a black SUV at the curb, yanking open the door. But before he could force Archer inside, Dexter tackled him from behind. They crashed to the pavement, Archer breaking free and running to Violet's outstretched arms. Mom, he sobbed as she clutched him tightly. Dexter had Elliot pinned, his face contorted with rage. You were going to take my son? Malcolm's orders, Elliot spat. Insurance. In case you and your ex-wife got too close to the truth. Police sirens wailed in the distance as Dexter hauled Elliot to his feet, keeping a firm grip on his collar. The truth is already out, he growled. And you and Malcolm are finished. 3 months later, Violet stood in the doorway of Archer's new bedroom, watching as Dexter helped him hang a model of the solar system from the ceiling. Their laughter filled the room, warming something in Violet that had been cold for too long. Malcolm Thorne was in federal custody, along with Elliot Richmond and 3 other executives implicated in the corruption scandal. Dexter had made good on his promise. He'd gone to the authorities himself, turned over everything they had, and cooperated fully with the investigation. Thorne Industries had taken a hit, but with Dexter's transparency and his commitment to reforms, the company was slowly rebuilding its reputation. Perfect, Dexter declared as they finished positioning the last planet. What do you think, Chief Engineer? It's awesome, Archer exclaimed. Thanks, Dad. The words still sent a jolt through Violet. Archer had started calling Dexter Dad just a few weeks ago, after they'd finally explained everything to him. A simplified version of their history that acknowledged the mistakes both adults had made without burdening him with the darker details. Dexter met Violet's gaze over Archer's head, his eyes filled with gratitude. Dinner's almost ready, she said. Wash up, space explorers. In the kitchen of the brownstone they'd purchased together, not as a reconciled couple, but as co-parents committed to giving Archer stability, Violet stirred the pasta sauce and reflected on how different her life was from what she'd imagined 3 months ago. Revenge, she'd discovered, was a poison that would have destroyed not just Dexter, but herself and possibly Archer too. Justice, on the other hand, had opened a path to healing none of them had thought possible. He's really settling in, Dexter said, entering the kitchen. I think he likes having roots after moving around so much. I think he likes having both of us, Violet replied. Though I'm not sure who's more excited about building that rocket model this weekend, you or him. Dexter smiled, the expression so much more frequent now than when she'd first returned to New York. Definitely me, he admitted. Thank you, Violet, for giving me this chance with him. With both of you. We're not there yet, Violet cautioned. Their relationship remained complicated, friends and co-parents, but the romantic wound had cut too deep for easy reconciliation. But we're on the right path. That's all I can ask for, Dexter said. He hesitated, then added, the foundation is moving forward with the environmental restoration project in Brazil. The communities affected by our mining operations, they're going to get the help they need. Violet nodded, genuinely impressed by how Dexter had channeled his resources into making amends. Preston would be proud, she said softly. I think so too, Dexter agreed. I miss him every day. I should have trusted him. Should have trusted you. We can't change the past, Violet said, the anger that had fueled her for so long now a distant memory. But we can learn from it. She handed him plates to set the table. And we can build something better for Archer. Over dinner, they listened as Archer excitedly described his new school, his new friends, and his science project on black holes. The easy family dynamic still felt surreal to Violet sometimes, like a dream she might wake from at any moment. But it wasn't a dream. It was a second chance none of them had expected. A chance born not from revenge, but from the harder, braver choice to seek truth and healing instead. Later, after Archer was asleep, Violet sat on the balcony overlooking the small garden behind their brownstone. Dexter joined her, offering a glass of wine, Chateau Margaux, their old favorite. To new beginnings, he said, echoing the toast from that fateful dinner 3 months ago. But this time, the words held promise instead of hidden agendas. To new beginnings, Violet agreed, clinking her glass against his. As they sat in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge in the night sky, Violet reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She'd come to New York seeking revenge, convinced it would heal the wounds of betrayal. Instead, she'd found something far more powerful, the courage to forgive not just Dexter but herself as well. Revenge might have satisfied her anger momentarily, but it would have left all three of them hollow. Truth, justice, and the slow, patient work of rebuilding trust had given them all something revenge never could, a future worth living for. Archer had 2 parents who loved him fiercely. Dexter was redeeming his company and his legacy. And Violet had finally laid to rest the bitterness that had consumed her for 8 long years. It wasn't perfect. There were still hard days, difficult conversations, and moments when the pain of the past surfaced unexpectedly. But they faced them together now, with honesty instead of secrets, with compassion instead of cruelty. And in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all, not the destruction of her enemy, but the creation of a life too beautiful to have been imagined in the depths of her darkest days.